Hello there. As you can see, it's Christmas, and I'm over here at the studio just kicking back, relax, and having a good time with my producer and roommate, Vincent. Isn't that right, Vince? Eat shit, asshole. I'm recording this in advance so I can pay rent. Anyways, I hope you're all having a good time, and I'll see you next year for some other things. Fine, I'll talk about something, give me a second. I'll talk about fucking what is this shit? Battlefield. Shit.
Doctor Who is a show that I'm all too familiar with. So much so that the first video I made in a long time was in fact about Doctor Who. And it's fitting we talk about the show during the holidays. After all, one of the classic era's most infamous stories had an episode where the Doctor broke character to wish people a Merry Christmas.
Here's a toast, a happy Christmas to all of us. Same to you, Doctor. Sir, incidentally, a happy Christmas to all of you at home.
A companion died 3 episodes prior.
And later, in the modern era, or is this just revival Who era? No, fuck it, I'm calling it Rewatch era Who. When that started, Christmas specials became a yearly tradition, often being the first look into a new Doctor, and even with the current era of the show, Christmas has become a massive vocal point.
All this is to say is I feel like talking about Doctor Who around the holiday season is pretty appropriate. And yes, while we're not talking about a holiday-themed story today, we are talking about an odd little story from the 7th Doctor era that I personally find a bit interesting, that being Battlefield. But since this is the first time we're talking about classic Who on the show, and the story requires a bit of context from before, let's give a quick crash course history lesson on where we are in Doctor Who and what's important to this story.
The story we are about to talk about, Battlefield, is the opener to Season 26, the last season of classic Who. Our Doctor is the wonderfully charming, yet menacing as hell, 7th Doctor, Sylvester McCoy. One of my personal favorites. As companion, a teenager named Ace, a mysterious and rebellious girl with a love of explosions, who is, again, one of my favorite companions of all time. But another key figure in this story is Unit, and by proxy, Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, both of which originally appeared all the way back in the 2nd Doctor story, The Web of Fear. Unit and the Brigadier became an important part of the 3rd Doctor era as, due to the Doctor being punished by the Time Lords for interfering with the universe, the 2nd Doctor was forced to regenerate and exiled to live on Earth, becoming Unit's scientific advisor. Brigadier and the Doctor became very close during this time, and even after Unit was phased out of the show after the start of the 4th Doctor era, he would make occasional cameos in the years since, namely being with the 5th Doctor, various Doctors at the 25th anniversary special The 5 Doctors, and now in Battlefield, his final appearance in the show proper, disregarding spin-offs.
Okay, so I rambled enough about Doctor Who. Let's talk about the story proper. Also, for those wondering, I was actually going to try to dress like that weird fan-made incarnation of the Doctor I did in that one video a while back, but I'm too lazy to. I don't want to get through all the pins, and also I wanted to try to do something festive, which is why I have the flannel jacket, even though it's not really inherently flannel, but you get my drift. Point is, I'm lazy. And I didn't want to go for it, so, yeah. I don't know. Let's just talk about Battlefield.
The Doctor and Ace land on Earth after they receive a distress call that simply says, Merlin. After they leave the TARDIS, in what is actually the last appearance of it in the classic series, they catch a ride with local archaeologist Peter Wormsley, who tells them that he is in the middle of excavating a plot of land near Cadbury. While they drive to the site, we see a small ship crashing onto Earth, with a knight coming out of it. One who appears to have a way of elevating himself for whatever reason. Meanwhile, Unit is using that site as a nuclear missile convoy, and the Doctor and Ace decide to investigate Unit's activities by using the one constant in the Doctor Who canon, identity theft.
This should remove a few obstacles.
Who's Elizabeth Shaw? I don't even look like her.
Oh, never mind.
You know, I like to imagine the Doctor just stole his ID when she left unit. I mean, we never saw her leave, so it's entirely likely that she just left her ID back there and he just took it. Come to think of it, I wouldn't be surprised if the Doctor keeps some kind of ID records of all of his former companions. This is the Doctor, after all.
When they meet with the new Brigadier, Winifred Bambira, she doesn't entertain the idea of giving out vital information to two seemingly random strangers, so the Doctor does attempt to get a reaction out of her when he mentions a few former enemies, but she just ignores it.
I'd just like to say 3 things.
What?
Yeti, Autons, Daleks. Cybermen and Silurians!
Didn't even mention the space pirates. Such a fake fan. You couldn't even mention the Sensorites either. God. Just a bunch of fake fans.
When she asks one of her men, someone who served under Lethbridge Stewart, why he let the two in, he mentions how during the days with Lethbridge Stewart, they had a scientific advisor named the Doctor. And when he shows up, all hell breaks loose. As a response to this, she calls Lethbridge Stewart, or just the Brigadier, as I will be calling him going forward to keep things simple, to tell him the Doctor is indeed back. As nights from before keep wandering around, even after finding the Doctor's TARDIS at one point but not entering it, Bambino drives the Doctor and Ace to the local Gore Crow Hotel, run by husband and wife duo Pat Rowlinson and his blind wife, Elizabeth. When they arrive, they also meet a girl who's around Ace's age, Sho Young. While driving back, Bambino encounters the TARDIS and oh shit, more Space Knights!
You know, it's funny to think that they thought regular guns would be able to defeat them. Also, this one guy defeats them with Looney Tunes style offense.
Back in the hotel, Shu mentions how Peter once found a scabbard that now hangs in the hotel. Elizabeth overhears this and mentions to the Doctor how she gets the feeling that the scabbard is waiting for someone.
Insert your obligatory SpongeBob reference here.
It was his hat, Mr. Krabs. He was #1.
The Doctor then asks Peter about the item when he arrives back, who tells him he found it by the lake, and, according to him, it's from all the way back in the 8th century. But the Doctor says it's been waiting for longer than the 8th century. Who is it waiting for? Morgaine, a powerful sorceress who is played by former one-off companion Sarah Kingdom from the Daleks' Master Plan. Yes, that mention about the Doctor breaking character and wishing everyone a Merry Christmas. Yes, that was foreshadowing, and not just me wanting to make a joke. I was foreshadowing, you fucks!
Also, was she just pondering her orb, waiting for the Doctor to show up? Like, how long was she there for?
The Brigadier, deciding to get involved with the Doctor's business for once instead of the other way around, catches a flight from a unit official to get to the Doctor's location. One of the Space Knights throws a space grenade to one of the other Knights, causing him to crash into the brewery behind the hotel. The Doctor, Ace, and Shu take a look at what's happening at the brewery and find the Knight that crashed into it. They unmask him, and he recognizes the Doctor as Merlin. This Knight in question is named Anselin. Despite Ace's protests over the Doctor being, the Doctor, Anselin still refers to him as such.
This is actually a really interesting idea, having the Doctor take the place of someone who's a historical figure, either fictional or real. It's really interesting, and it's something I don't think Doctor Who does that often.
And it's one the show's played around with beforehand, namely all the way back in the First Doctor era, with both the Mythmakers and technically in the story The Massacre. That story in particular featured William Holtner playing both the Doctor and the Abbot of, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce this, Ambroise. I don't care if I fucking mispronounce it, the French Old Wheel! That story in particular played a lot with the Doctor's morally dubious attitude, just something that was apparent with the First Doctor, especially all the way back at the start of the series. Hell, Time Lash had the Doctor be seen as some sort of savior by the people in that story, but I can't really recall any moments in modern Who that did this. At least to my recollection. I will admit my memories of 11 and 12 can be kind of hazy at points, so don't quote me on that, but still. Sure, there were plenty of times in which the Doctor interacted with historical figures, but none of them where he takes the place of one. Well, unless you count Family of Blood. Either way, when the Doctor theorizes Anselin might come from another dimension, Bambira attempts to arrest them. However, just as the Doctor tries to explain himself, the knights that Anselin fought off show up, ending Part 1. When we pick up on Part 2, Bambira, to show up how much shit she gets done, threatens the knights as they enter. But since they are in, full armor, that does fuck all. The head knight, Mordred, who also happens to be Morgaine's son, takes off his mask, recognizing Anselin. He also recognizes the Doctor and refers to him as Merlin as well. But because the Doctor doesn't really want any of them to kill each other, he plays along by pretending to know what they're talking about, successfully fending off the evil knights by way of bullshitting. Again, another constant in the Doctor Who canon.
You know these guys then?
Never met them before.
As Anselin and Bambira decide to now wrestle each other, Mordred casts this ritual that allows his mother to come to their dimension. Now, while it's not explained how Mordred or Anselin got here, we have established that they, along with nearly everyone else who isn't either a unit member or a local, come from another universe in which King Arthur and the surrounding tales do in fact exist, only with space guns and space grenades, but also magic.
Which, to be honest, is a really fucking cool idea. Like, yes, I'm a dumb American who knows nothing about King Arthur and does not care for him, but even as somebody with no knowledge of King Arthur or Arthurian legend or whatever, besides, like, the bare basics, this is still a really cool idea, and I genuinely wish they did more of it in the story, but what we do get is perfectly fine.
I love the idea of a world where folk heroes do in fact exist. The most recent example that I can think of that comes to my mind of this happening was Robots of Sherwood back in the 12th Doctor era. But as I mentioned beforehand, Doctor Who has only sort of dabbled with the idea of blending historical fictional characters into the real world, often with some sort of sci-fi twist. I was gonna go on kind of a huge rant about how Doctor Who doesn't really do a lot of these kind of stories anymore, and instead the only kind of historicals they do are like, I don't know, vaguely historical. Even though this isn't really historical, this is more like historical fiction. Whatever. Point is, this is just fucking cool. I just really like it. Because of her summoning, Morgaine psychically calls out to the Doctor, and she tells him to not get involved. The Doctor appropriately tells her to fuck off, and then BAM! Title drop!
Then, Merlin, let this be our last battlefield.
The next day, the Doctor and Ace go out to the dig site with Wormsley. They discover a bit of writing instructing them to dig in that spot, one which was apparently written by the Doctor, at least according to him. How did the Doctor and Ace dig at the site, you may ask? By blowing it up, of course!
Did somebody say boom?
Meanwhile, Bambira and Anselin bond in their own special way.
Shut up and run, Anselin.
My lady.
You call me my lady once more and I'll break your nose.
They seem like they're getting along well. And Mordred and her son showcase their power by attacking the helicopter that conveniently is housing Brigadier and the unit soldier. But joke's on them, because both the pilot and Brigadier seem awfully calm about the situation. Thankfully, they make it out A-okay, but not after a really impressive pyrotechnic explosion happens.
Yeah, that's another thing about this story. The action scenes are actually pretty good. Now, sure, the fight choreography is just okay, but they did not skimp out on the explosions and the pyrotechnics, which is all the more impressive when you remember just how much of a shit budget they had at the time.
While everything else is going on, Morgaine appears to disown her son, as she found out the battle they had earlier was fought on a graveyard, and since Morgaine still has some sense of honor, she tells her son to leave her sight because of it. Either way, fuck that, because Brigadier, in an attempt to find someone to help his injured pilot, encounters Morgaine, and in true Brigadier fashion, opts to shoot first and ask questions later. He also drops one of the hardest lines in Doctor Who history, and I mean that with 100% sincerity.
I am Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart. Surrender now, and we can avoid bloodshed.
She opts to save the battle for later, as to avoid interrupting the ceremony they are having for the dead of our world, but tells him when they meet again, she is going to kill him, not realizing this is the fucking Brigadier. Meanwhile, the Doctor and Ace venture around the tunnel, discovering the entrance to King Arthur's spaceship, which happens to be underwater, because of course it is.
Because of course they have one that looks like a Power Ranger set.
When they get to the main area of the spaceship, they find the body of King Arthur, who appears to be in suspended animation, to which they say, "Fuck that, the dude is dead!" Ace decides to try and unleash the sword, and by her surprise, she gets it on her first try. Lucky bastard. But doing so unleashes a ghost eel? A bad After Effects preset? Seriously, what the hell is this? After making a second Doctor reference, they try and get the hell out of there. Ace goes the wrong way and activates a booby trap, which locks her in a tube and tries to drown her, ending part 2.
Fun fact, this prop almost killed Sophie Aldred. Okay, not all fun facts are fun.
Doctor frees Ace at the start of part 3 from the death trap, allowing her to come out of the lake with Excalibur in hand. Conveniently, as Wormsley is telling Anselin about the Lady of the Lake.
What are you doing in the lake? Drowning. Here you can be King of England.
Meanwhile, the Brigadier comes to save the Doctor, uniting the two for the first time since the 5th Doctor era. Meanwhile, Mordred drinks his sorrows away at the hotel. The unit soldier, who is in charge of taking the Brigadier to the Doctor, comes in and asks if she can make a call, only for Morgaine to appear, deciding to demonstrate her power yet again by crushing a bullet with her hand when the soldier tries to shoot her, killing said soldier and giving Elizabeth back her vision. Which, by the way, this immediately establishes Morgaine as a threat, and it is awesome.
If there's one supporting actor in the story that I feel like does an amazing job outside of Nicholas Courtly, it's Jean Walsh. She just has this really threatening aura around her that makes every scene with her such a treat. Sure, she can be a bit hammy, but it's Doctor Who. That's kind of a given. And clearly she knows what she's doing because apparently she's an Emmy award-winning actor. She got an Emmy as far back as 1975. And dare I say, it's some of the best casting in Doctor Who at this point in the show's history. Genuinely, I think she makes this story very, very memorable. Her performance alone does that for me.
Morgaine's knights attempt to interfere with the Doctor and his friends from making it to the hotel, by the way of more space grenades and space guns, but thankfully they make it out with minimal damage. Bambira takes things in her own hands by pulling out a gun and shooting the fuck out of everyone, because she gets shit done, damn it. Unit begins to evacuate the locals from the hotel, and we get more references to past stories for those nerds out there who care, like me.
Unit's been very busy, Doctor. We've also got high explosive rounds for Yetis and very efficient arm-piercing rounds for robots. And we've even got gold-tipped bullets for you-know-what.
No silver.
Silver bullets?
Oh, you never know.
Oh, Doctor, you're about 16 years off from that ever happening in the show. Or would it be like decades off in the past, because it technically happened in whenever Tooth and Claw took place? I don't know, man.
Brigadier informs the Doctor that Bambira and Anselin are indeed alive, but as a result of their interaction with Morgaine's knights, they ended up leading them to the area we saw at the start of the story. You know, the one with the nuclear missile convoy on standby? The Doctor and the Brigadier decide to make their way to the site by the only appropriate way, Betsy, also making its return since the 5th Doctor era, kinda. Before leaving, the Doctor gives Ace...
He looks like a piece of chalk.
It is.
A piece of chalk? Did the Doctor want to warn Ace about the sea bears?
But actually it's to protect Ace and Xiao Yang from Morgaine, as Ace still has Excalibur on board. Despite this, Morgaine still attempts to get the sword from them by pitting Ace and Xiao Yang against each other by way of magic, causing them to have an argument, in which Xiao Yang says something rather interesting.
I bet nobody likes you. Shut up. First chance he got, the Doctor went off without you. Shut up! Shut up! I bet even your parents hated your guts. Shut up, you yellow stunted!
Now, for reference, at this point in Doctor Who, we know barely anything about Ace. Sure, we know things here and there, like she was a runaway, and of course we first saw her working at a diner on that ice planet, which was certainly a choice by the writers. But to my knowledge, this is the first explicit reference to what happened to Ace before she met the Doctor.
And while at the time of writing this I haven't seen them, I know that later stories, Ghostlight and The Curse of Fendrick, also do dive into Ace's backstory as well. Hell, you can even make the argument that Ace's fear of abandonment was brought up way later in The Power of the Doctor, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Either way, good foreshadowing. Back on the battlefield, Mordred and Ansel engage in battle, but the Doctor commands them to stop with that damn great voice of his.
There will be no battle here!
However, Mordred admits that this is all a distraction. Morgaine appears in front of Ace and Shao, threatening them by summoning a demon known as the Destroyer, a being that, as his name suggests, wants to destroy worlds, and he looks damn amazing.
I love this so much. It looks really, really good. And keep in mind, this is when this show had a budget that was the equivalent of, like, pennies on the dollar. Okay, that's maybe an over-exaggeration, but still, I like to make fun of Doctor Who's effects works, practical or otherwise, from time to time, but when they do a really good practical effect, it looks amazing.
This brings us to the end of Part 3, and we start Part 4 with a rare moment of the Doctor threatening Mordred. Mordred is told by his mother that the Doctor is just bluffing with his threats. However, when the Brigadier shows up, she just tells her son to die well, as she commands her knights to fight off the unit team. As a result, the Doctor and Ace kidnap Mordred so he doesn't end up helping his mother. The three are brought to the hotel, but once they do arrive, an explosion happens in the lobby, which was a result of Morgaine and the Destroyer leaving. As a result of them rushing in to make sure the girls are okay, Mordred leaves. The Doctor makes sure that Ace is okay, and she tells her that she gave them the sword because if not, they would have been killed. But thankfully, they see a portal to Morgaine's location, in which they enter in the silliest way possible.
High drama is very similar to comedy. It's all a matter of
Timing!
After gaining back Excalibur, Morgaine unleashes the Destroyer. It appears that all is lost until Mordred shows up, pissed at his mother for almost leaving him to die, but before anything else can actually happen, they teleport out of the building. After escaping, Brigadier runs back and tells the Destroyer to properly fuck off, shoots him, and after a fake-out death, it's revealed that he killed the Destroyer.
Ace,
Yes, Brigadier.
I'm getting too old for this sort of thing. He's all yours from now on.
Meanwhile, back at the site again, Mordred and Morgaine kidnap Bambira in an attempt to launch the nuke. While this goes on, the Doctor and company restore the sword in its proper location. Ace finds a note from the Doctor, likely from the future, which tells him that King Arthur died in battle and Morgaine now has access to the nuke. Once he confronts Morgaine, he gives a big speech about the horrors of war and nuclear warfare, asking her if she still has any sense of honor by using these weapons, convincing her to stop it from launching. And she does. However, she tells the Doctor to have King Arthur fight her in battle. But the Doctor breaks the news to her that he has been dead for centuries. At which Morgaine tearfully reminisces about her former enemy, effectively defeating her and her son. Our last scene of the story is of everyone back at the Brigadier's house, with the woman leaving the men at the house for a girl's adventure, I guess, as we fade to black, or rather cut to credits, but it's better to say fade to black.
You know, for a story that's apparently in Doctor Who's dark era, I thought this was a pretty enjoyable story. Sure, nothing fantastic. I think it's just a tier above meh, but still pretty good and, like I said, enjoyable. And I think a lot of that has to do with the cast, which is arguably the strongest element of the story.
Ace and the Doctor play off each other perfectly. I feel like every Doctor has one companion which allows for damn near perfect pairings. The first Doctor and the original crew, second Doctor and Jamie, third Doctor and Jo, fourth and Sarah Jane, fifth Doctor and Tegan, sixth Doctor and the god herself, Peri Brown, and finally in this case, Ace and the seventh Doctor. My apologies to Mel. People often describe the Seventh Doctor as a chess master, carefully planning out his moves well in advance and be able to get the leg up on whatever threat of the week he's facing, and we definitely see that here. Constantly, the Doctor is leaving reminders to himself from the past, convincing other people to follow in his footsteps, even playing along with the idea of him being Merlin. He does this so effortlessly, and Sylvester McCoy really shines here as a result. And the Morlun thing is still really fascinating to think about, especially since as the story goes on, you start to wonder if the Doctor really was considered to be, or at least inspired, the alternative dimensions version of Morlun. The Doctor is supposed to be mysterious after all, so having a story play around with ideas like that is a great idea. Ace, however, well, outside of her fun interactions with Shaw, which, I do feel like you can kind of say something about what they were trying to do here, if you know what I mean. She does fine here, but I don't know, it just feels like she was just kind of there. Sure, she was the one who managed to help find the spaceship, and the one who got Excalibur, but outside of that, I can't really remember her being that active of a presence. Which is a shame, because she's one of my favorite parts about this era of the show, and one of my favorite things about Ace is about how she just didn't stand around and wait for the Doctor to help her. She takes things in her own hands with or without him. I also wish she got more time to meet with the Brigadier. I felt like we would have had gotten an interaction not unlike what we saw with Sarah Jane and Rose during school reunion. A former companion interacting with a new, younger one, comparing and contrasting two versions of the Doctor. That would have been really fun to see, but sadly, we don't get any of that. But thankfully, the Brigadier here is actually really good. Sure, the first half of the story he doesn't do much, but later once his ride crashes, he's in full force. The encounter he had with Morgaine proves this, because knowing him, he could have probably killed her and her son on the spot. And I feel like his chemistry with the Doctor still works as well as it did all the way back in the 70s. Again though, I feel like he could have just done a lot more, especially with the first episode and a half, we are just kind of waiting for him to show up on the field. Still though, once he was able to start being involved in the plot proper, he wasted no time in helping out. His standoff with the Destroyer at the end especially being a highlight. Speaking of highlights, Ansel and Bambera being paired up led to a lot of fun moments. While I found Anselin to be the weaker of the two, outside of his occasional dumb blonde energy moments, I'd be lying if I said they weren't my favorite side characters in the story.
In this world, we have a great and honorable tradition of tactical withdrawal.
You wish to run away? Well, there can be but 30 of them at the most.
If you don't start running, I'll kill you myself. Now, come on!
Winifred,
What?
art thou betrothed?
Bambera especially, you can see a lot of future unit officers in her. She is a hard ass that takes shit from nobody and opts to shoot first and ask questions later. She is definitely the person that gets the most physical here, and I'm all for it. With that being said, the real star of the show is Morgaine. I mentioned it in the video proper, but she has this aura around her performance that elevates the story to another level. And then there's her son! Yep, he's only there alright. The action in this story pulls no punches. The pyrotechnics, the prop team, really, everyone brought their A game. All done pretty well. The fight choreography, however, is very strange. It's not really good, but given the state of the show at the time, it's really all they could have done. And as for the plot, I don't think it's bad, no boring. It's just that there isn't really anything that's all too interesting besides the lore details of the alternative dimension. And again, the idea of the Doctor being a fictional character. Well, more so than he actually is, you get the idea. Then again, I must mention, I am a dumb American who knows next to nothing about King Arthur, so forgive me for those who actually care about it. And as a result, can probably pick up on more of the nuances of the relationship between the two and all the references and whatever. Again, I'm a dumb American who cares a lot about weird Japanese bug people fighting other bug people.
Well, that was fun. I hope to kind of make this a tradition wherever you would talk about something Doctor Who related. Not even just the classic stories, maybe some of the more recent episodes, audio dramas, maybe I'll even read a book or two, I don't know. But regardless, happy holidays, hope you guys have a safe New Year's, and thank you for supporting the channel over the past year. Next time we'll talk something more recent, I'm not really sure. But yeah, happy holidays and thank you.